Okay, let's unpack this. I want you to close your eyes for a second. Well, not if you're driving, obviously. But I want you to picture the absolute Mount Everest of fantasy world building. I'm talking about the gold standard, the one that every other author for the last, 70 years has been desperately trying to climb. Who comes to mind?
It's a rhetorical question, really. It has to be J.R. Tolkien.
It has to be.
There isn't even a close second place when we are talking about pure foundational depth.
Exactly. You look at The Lord of the Rings, and sure, it's a great story about a ring and a hobbit, but then you look behind it. You peek behind the curtain, and you see the Silmarillion.
Oh, the Silmarillion.
You see Unfinished Tales. You see 12 volumes of the history of Middle-earth. It's not just a backdrop for a story. It feels like he unearthed a history book for a continent that doesn't actually exist.
That is the key distinction. Most authors write a story and then they paint a set behind it.
Right, it's scenery.
Tolkien simulated a world. You have functioning languages, not just gibberish, but philologically consistent languages with etymological roots.
He was a philologist. That was his day job.
It was his day job. He built the languages first and then created the people to speak them. You have lineages of kings that go back thousands of years. You have geology, geography, and weather pattern. It is a realized past and a future history.
It's the kind of depth that makes you feel like you could major in Middle-earth studies at a university and still not know everything. But, and here's the giant looming that frames our entire conversation today, there's a cost to that level of detail.
Time, the most non-renewable resource of them all.
Right. Tolkien didn't knock this out on a weekend.
No. He spent between 40 and 50 years building that legendarium. It was a lifetime of obsession. He was tweaking dialects and family trees until the very end.
50 years. That is a literal lifetime. And that brings us to the core challenge we are diving into today. We live in the modern world. Content moves at the speed of light.
No.
If you're an author today, you can't just disappear into a study for half a century and emerge with a masterpiece. You have Amazon algorithms to feed. You have readers who will forget you existed if you don't publish every 6 months.
It is the ultimate tension. Efficiency versus quality.
Yeah.
Can a modern author actually achieve that Tolkien-level depth, that feeling that the world is ancient and real without spending a lifetime doing it?
It sounds impossible. It sounds like you have to choose.
Yeah.
Either you write fast and shallow, or you write deep and slow. But the source material we are covering today proposes a third option, a very specific, and I think for some people, a pretty controversial answer.
We are looking at a breakdown by fantasy author John Del Arroz, often known as JDA. He's a prolific writer, and he released a breakdown on his Caught Our Eye.
The core question he's asking is, can Tolkien-level world building be achieved in modern fantasy? But here is the twist, and this is where I need everyone to suspend their knee-jerk reaction. He isn't trying to do it by hiring a team of ghostwriters. He isn't trying to clone himself. He is attempting to do this using artificial intelligence.
But, and I cannot stress this enough, not in the way you are probably thinking.
Right, because when I hear AI and fantasy novel in the same sentence, my brain immediately goes to the dystopian nightmare.
Of course.
I picture a robot sitting at a typewriter, churning out generic, soulless prose while the author sips a margarita on the beach.
That is the common fear, the ChatGPT write me a blockbuster scenario. But that is effectively the opposite of what is happening here. The mission, as JDA outlines it, involves using AI as a literary archivist and a structural
Archivist, that's a very specific word choice.
It is. He isn't using the tools to write the prose. He is using them to organize, synthesize, and expand upon work he has already written.
So let me get this straight. He's essentially trying to speedrun the mythology creation process. He's taken a stack of books he already wrote, 6 books worth of his own creative chaos, and he's trying to turn that into a cohesive world Bible in a matter of months, rather than the decades it took Tolkien.
Precise. It's about retrofitting depth. It raises some absolutely fascinating questions about the creative process, about memory, and about the relationship between an author and their own work.
Okay, so this is our mission for
today. We are going to explore the origin of his world, which he calls Ruslundi. We are going to tear apart specific AI archivist workflow he's developed, how it actually works technically, and we're going to look at the ethical and practical implications of using technology.
I'm really excited about the technical side of this because I think a lot of people talk about using AI vaguely, but he actually shows the receipt. But before we get to the robots, we have to talk about the world itself. You can't organize a closet if you don't have any clothes, and you can't archive a world if you haven't created one.
True. You need the raw material first.
So where does Ruslandia come from? What is this world?
The origin story of the series itself is actually quite interesting, and it speaks to the author's personality a bit. The series is called The Adventures of Baron von Monocle.
Baron von Monocle. That is a title that tells you exactly what genre we're in immediately.
It certainly hints at it. The first book is titled For Steam and Country. It all started back in 2014.
And the spark wasn't just a random dream he had, right? The source material says it was born out of a wager.
It was a challenge, really. JDA mentions that he saw a claim floating around the internet, you know how these things go on social media, essentially stating that male authors were incapable of writing convincing female perspectives.
Ah, the classic men can't write women discourse. It's a tale as old as the internet.
Exactly. And JDA is the type of personality who sees a line in the sand and, decides to pole vault over it. He accepted the challenge.
He took it personally.
It seems so. He decided to write a book in the first person from a female perspective, the character Zara, specifically to prove that it could be done effectively.
So the entire engine for this 6-book saga started as a hold my beer moment.
In a way, yes. But while that sparked the character voice, he had a much broader vision for the set. He identified a specific aesthetic gap in the fantasy market that he wanted to fill.
I found this part really relatable because I've felt this too. He talks about the state of steampunk. When you say steampunk to the average person, what do they picture?
Usually. It's Victorian London, foggy streets, Sherlock Holmes type, top hats.
Cogs. Cogs on everything.
Cogs and goggles. And then you just glue some brass gears onto a corset or slap some goggles on a guy, maybe throw in a vampire or a werewolf and call it a day.
Right. It's basically, what if Queen Victoria had an iPhone made of steam?
Mm-hmm.
It's usually alternate history, not fantasy. It's our world, but with a different tech tree.
JDA calls it Victorian England with vampires added. He wanted to move away from that. He didn't want the story tethered to Earth's history. He explicitly mentions being inspired by costumes he saw at DragonCon.
A great source of inspiration.
And the visual language of the Final Fantasy video game series.
Final Fantasy is such a crucial touchstone here. For anyone who hasn't played them, specifically the earlier ones or maybe Final Fantasy VI or IX, they have this unique blend. It's high fantasy swords, magic, monsters, but there's also technology.
Right. There are airships, there are machines, but the machines run on magic or steam and they coexist with knights and armor in ancient castles. It's not science fiction, it's something else.
It's Magitech.
Magitech, that is the vibe he high fantasy steam. A world called Ruslandia that has its own continents, its own geography, its own political rules, and is not just an alternate version of 1880s Europe. He wanted a secondary world.
And he didn't just write one book and move on. He's been busy.
Very busy. Since 2014, the series has grown to 6 books. Titles like The Iron Wedding and The Crystal Conspiracy.
So it's an established series.
Plus comic book, plus short stories. It's a whole universe at this point.
Okay, so let's pause and look at the scale here. 6 novels, comics, short story. That is hundreds of thousands of words. That is hundreds of characters, locations, dates, and plot point. And this brings us to the problem that every long-running author faces.
The problem of lore drift.
I love that term. Lore drift. It sounds like a geological process.
It feels like one to the author. When you write that much material over nearly a decade without a massive Tolkien-esque plan established beforehand, you inevitably start to forget things.
Oh, absolutely. I can barely remember what I had for lunch on Tuesday. You asked me what color the eyes of the innkeeper in chapter 4 of a book I wrote 7 years ago were. I'm going to guess.
And you might guess wrong.
And I'm probably going to guess wrong.
And that is where the cracks. In book 1, a city is described as being in the mountain. In book 4, the characters walk to that same city, but now it's on the coast because the plot needed a harbor. Or in book 2, a peace treaty was signed in the year 500. In book 5, someone mentions the Great War of the year 500.
And the readers notice. Oh boy. Do the readers notice? They are the ones with the wikis. They are the ones on Reddit saying, actually, on page 45, you said?
Exactly. The information becomes scattered. It lives in the author's head, which is fallible. It lives in distinct Word documents that aren't linked. It lives in scattered notebook. It isn't a unified system. JDA's goal was to stop the drift.
So he's trying to build a dam.
He wanted to consolidate all of this loose material to build a massive, consistent world Bible that rivals the density of Tolkien, but he had to do it retroactively.
He has the raw ore, the 6 books, and now he needs a refinery. This is where we pivot to the tech. This is where the AI comes in.
This is the methodology section of our deep dive, the nuts and bolts.
So he calls it the AI Archivist. What does that actually look like? Is he just pasting chapters into ChatGPT and saying, remember this?
It's a bit more sophisticated than that. He uses a specific tool set. The core platform he mentions is called Poppy AI.
Poppy AI. I have to admit, that's a new one. I'm used to hearing about OpenAI or Claude or Midjourney. What makes Poppy different?
Poppy is described as a whiteboard-style interface. Think of a tool like Miro or Obsidian, where you have a visual canvas. You can place notes, documents, and draw lines connected.
So it's a visual workspace for ideas.
Exactly. But the brain powering it plugs into the large language models like ChatGPT or Claude, so the sticky notes are smart.
I see. So you can have a note for character A and another for city B, and then ask the AI, has A ever been to B? And it can draw a line and explain the connection.
That's the idea. This serves as his central workspace. It allows him to see the connections visually. But for the public-facing side, where the fans actually go to read about the lore, he uses a platform called World Anvil.
Okay, World Anvil, I know. That's huge in the D&D community and with fantasy writers. It's basically a tool to build your own Wikipedia for your made-up world.
Exactly. It has templates for every character sheets, interactive maps, timelines, articles about flora and fauna. It is incredibly powerful. What? And ask any dungeon master this. It is also incredibly empty.
It's a blank void. It's intimidating.
And filling it out manually is grueling work. You have to type out every date. You have to write a bio for every minor character. You have to describe the export economy of the Dwarven Kingdom. It is data entry.
And nobody becomes a fantasy author because they have a burning passion for data entry.
No.
You want to write the sword fight, not the trade tariff spreadsheet.
Precisely. So JDA's workflow is designed to bypass the drudge. He uses the AI to generate the content to fill the world anvil. But we have to be very clear about the ingestion process, because this is where the ethics and the quality arguments really hinge.
Right. How does he get the AI to know his world? Because ChatGPT doesn't know who Baron von Monocle is. It wasn't trained on his specific private drafts.
Exactly. He had to create a closed loop.
Yeah.
He didn't start from scratch. He fed his existing body of work into the AI.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. He had the AI read and summarize every single published book, every short story, and even his unpublished fragments and notes.
Okay, I want to drill down on this feeding part technically, because a lot of people try this and fail. They try to paste an entire novel into a chatbot, and the bot crashes or forgets the first half. How is he handling the volume?
That is the context window challenge. In the early days of AI, like, even 2 years ago, you could only feed it a few pages. Now, models like Claude or the newer Gs have massive contexts capable of holding hundreds of pages in memory at once.
So the tech has just gotten better.
The tech has gotten much better. But for a project this size, he's likely using a method called chunking, or more technically, a vector data.
Break that down for us. What is a vector database in this context?
Imagine a massive library. If you ask a librarian a question, they don't read every book in the library. They look up the index card, find the relevant book, and read the relevant page. A vector database works similarly for AI. It takes all of his book, breaks them down into small, meaningful chunk paragraphs or pages, and then creates a mathematical representation of vector for each chunk.
The mathematical fingerprint.
A perfect way to put it. So when JDA asks, what happened to Zara in book 3, the AI doesn't read all 6 books again. It does a quick mathematical search for the chunks that are most relevant to Zara. And book 3 retrieves just those, loads them into its short-term memory, and then answers the question.
So he essentially built a custom search engine for his own brain.
That is the perfect way to describe it. He created a searchable database where the AI technically knows the specific details of the world better than he might remember them in the moment.
That is such a power move for a creator. It's like having a super fan, that one guy at the convention who has memorized every word you've ever written, living in your computer, standing by 247 to answer your questions.
Exactly.
Did I say this guy had a mustache?
And the AI replies, no, sir. In chapter 3 of book 2, paragraph 14, you explicitly stated he was clean-shaven and had a scar on him.
That saves so much time. Instead of flipping through physical books or Seed or LAF searching through 12 different Word docs, you just ask the Oracle.
It effectively outsources the memory retention required for complex continuity, and this allows him to move to the next phase. Once the AI knows the book, he can start building the World Bible.
Okay.
And the specific examples he gives of how he did this are just, honestly, they're brilliant tech.
Yeah, let's look at the timeline project, because if there is one thing that breaks a writer's spirit, it is the timeline.
Timelines are the bane of existence. They're so easy to mess up. So JDA used the AI to construct a master timeline from scattered references across all 6. But his world has a specific quirk that makes this mathematically difficult: regnal dating.
Regnal dating. Okay, for the non-history buffs, let's unpack that.
It is a historical method of keeping time. We use a standardized calendar, 2023, 2024, etc. But in many ancient and medieval societies, they dated years based on the king or queen.
So instead of 1999, it's the 4th year of King Leroy.
Exactly. The 24th year of King Malachi, the 15th's reign.
That had so much flavor to a fantasy book. It feels imperial, feels old, but oh my God, the maths.
It is a logistical nightmare, because to know when things happen relative to each other, you have to know exactly when every king and queen started their reign.
Right.
If book 1 takes place in the 3rd year of King X and book 2 is in the 2nd year of Queen Y, how much time passed? You don't know unless you know how long King X lived.
And if you just made those dates up on the fly while writing because they sounded cool,
then you have a mess, a total mess. JDA had the AI scan the texts, identify every single mention of a regnal date, year 3 of Queen Rhaena, year 12 of King Theodore, and then calculate and standardize these dates into a linear history.
So the AI did the algebra. It solved for X. It looked at all the variables and said, for this to be true, King Malachi must have died in this year.
It stitched together the history of the kings and queens based on offhand comments characters made in the books. It revealed a consistent history that he had essentially felt his way through, but now it was concrete. He could look at it and say, oh, King Malachi reigned for 14 years. I didn't realize that, but the math says he did.
That is wild. It's taking the vibes of the story and turning them into hard data. But my favorite example of this archivist role is what he calls the log entry. This one felt really clever to me.
This is a great narrative trick. The protagonist of the series is Zara, but her father is the famous Baron von Monocle. In the books, specifically the first 3, the chapters often begin with epigraphs.
Epigraphs are those little snippets of text at the start of a chapter, a quote from a fake history book, or a line from a song.
Right. In this case, they were captain's logs written by the Baron, set 20 years prior to the main story.
I love when books do that. It adds texture. It makes the world feel like it existed before page 1.
It does. But usually those are just flavor. They are disconnected snippets scattered across hundreds of pages. You read one, you forget it, you read the chapter.
They're literary seasoning.
Exactly. JDA had the AI go through the books and extract only these log entries.
Just the Italian.
Just the logs. And it compiled them into a single chronological document.
So he stripped away the main story, Zara's story, and just left the father's diary.
Exact. And the result was startling. A cohesive prequel narrative. He realized he had inadvertently written a complete storyline of the father's adventures 20 years prior. It had a beginning, middle, and end. He just hadn't noticed because it was broken up into 50 little pieces.
That is fantastic. Now he has a source document. He could use that to write actual prequel stories. Or, honestly, he could just polish that document and release it as a bonus for fans. The Lost Journals of the Baron.
It creates content out of content that already existed. It's archaeology in your own work. You're digging up a story you didn't even realize you'd buried.
And that leads us to the absolute peak of this Tolkien comparison, the implied mythology.
This is the most profound part of JDA. This is where it gets...
So, implied mythology. This sounds like a term from a literary theory class. What does that mean in the context of a fun steampunk adventure?
It refers to the iceberg of Worldbuilding. Hemingway talked about this, and Tolkien was the master of. The idea is that the reader only sees the top 10%, the part relevant. But to make that 10% feel real, the author has to imply 90%.
Right. It's when a character says, by the beard of the ancient king. They don't stop and give a lecture on who the ancient king was.
Yeah.
But the fact that they swear by him implies he existed and was important.
Exactly. Or referencing the ruins of Osgiliath. You don't need a history lesson to know that something big happened. It gives the world weight.
So how did the AI help with this? Did he just ask it, find my iceberg?
Basically, yes. He used the AI to hunt for these throwaway lines in his own book. He asked it to find references to history, geography, or magic that weren't fully...
Searching for the loose threads.
And it found gold. For example, he had mentioned a region called the Ath. The maps showed it was a massive landmass, the size of Spain. But he had never said a story there. It was just, a shape on a map. However, in the text, he had mentioned offhand that it possessed a crystal technology magic system that is now lost to time.
Lost crystal technology. Classic fantasy trope. Love it.
And the AI also flagged references to an Age of Giants.
An Age of Giants.
Yes. In a couple of different books, characters had referenced an ancient era where giants roamed, who have since died out. Again, it's a throwaway line for flavor.
A seasoning.
But when the AI aggregated these details, giants, crystal magic, Ath Peninsula JDA had an aha. He realized the structure of his world's history was already there, implied in these fragments.
He had the era.
He had a first stage, the Age of Giants. He had a second, the era of crystal magic on the Ath. And he had the current third, the steampunk era, where the books take...
He had the structure of a Silmarillion hidden in the background noise of his adventure. He just couldn't see it because he's too close.
Precise. The structure was there. He just needed the tool to reveal it.
This allows him to say, okay, the Second Age isn't just a vague idea anymore. I know it happened on the Ath Peninsula, I know it involved crystals, and I know it ended. It solidifies the deep lore.
That is actually kind of spooky. It's almost like the AI is acting as a psychoanalyst for the author. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about the giant.
It's reflecting the subconscious patterns the author put in without thinking.
That is a beautiful way to put it. It is pattern recognition applied. Humans are pattern-seeking animals. We put patterns in things even when we don't mean to. The AI is just very, very good at spotting.
And it doesn't stop at text, does it? The outline says he's using this for visuals, too.
He is. And this is important because Baron von Monocle is a multimedia project. There are comic. Visual consistency is key.
Let's talk about the airship. Because if you're doing steampunk, the airship is your X-Wing. It's your Millennium Falcon. It has to look right.
And JDA was very specific that he did not want the standard look.
No Zeppelins?
No dirigibles, no big balloons. He wanted Final Fantasy-style airship.
Which implies what? For people who haven't played the games.
Think of a naval galleon, a wooden ship with masts and sails, but instead of floating on water, it floats in the sky. Maybe it has propellers on the side. Maybe it has floaty bits or magical anti-gravity engines, but it looks like a boat, not a balloon.
The rule of cool over physics. Got it.
Exactly. But describing that to an artist, or even keeping it consistent in your own head, can be tricky. It's a boat, but it flies, but no balloon. It can easily be misinterpreted.
Right. You hire a comic artist, you say airship, they draw the Hindenburg.
So JDA used the text descriptions from the summaries generated by the AI to prompt an AI image gen. He wanted to see if the AI could visualize the ship based only on how he described text.
That's a fascinating stress test. He's auditing his own writing. If I describe it like this, does the machine draw what I see in my head?
Yes. If the AI draws a blimp, he knows his description wasn't clear enough. If it draws a flying galleon, he knows he nailed it. And once he gets an image that matches his vision, he has a reference sheet. He can hand that to a human artist and say, draw this, but in your style.
It bridges the gap between the author's imagination and the visual reality. It creates a design document.
And now this brings up a point that I find really interesting and maybe a little risky. He's not just building this Bible for future books. He's talking about going back ones.
Revising the past. This is where the Tolkien comparison gets a little complicated. Tolkien certainly revised The Hobbit to make it fit Lord of the Rings better. He changed the riddle game with Gollum.
Pretty major retcon.
It was. But JDA is talking about releasing revised editions of the early book based on this new AI-generated Bible. Is this a George Lucas special editions situation?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is he going to add CGI rocks in front of R2-D2? Is he going to make Han shoot second?
Left.
I hope not. Hopefully not that intrusive. But the goal, as he states it, is to tighten continuity. Now that he knows for a fact what the Age of Giants was, or how the regnal dates actually align, he wants to polish the early writing to align with this solidified deep lore.
That makes sense. If you wrote book 1 in 2014, and by book 6 in 2023 you've decided that magic works a certain way, book 1 might feel a little wobbly.
Exactly. Maybe in book 1 a character uses a crystal in a way that breaks the rules he established in book 5. He wants to fix that. He mentions improving philosophical consistency and character arc. It's about making the series feel like it was planned from the start, even if
it's retroactively turning himself from a pantser, someone who flies by the seat of their pants, into a planner.
That is the perfect terminology. He is reverse engineering a master.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Is there a danger here? Part of the charm of long-running series is seeing the author grow. Sometimes the inconsistencies are charming. Does scrubbing them clean make it feel sterile?
That is a valid concern. If you over-polish, you lose the rough edges of the original creative spark. But I think JDA would argue that the trade-off is worth it for the immersion. If a reader is taken out of the story because the dates don't match or a character acts inconsistently, that's a fail. He wants the world to feel seamless.
Okay, so we've covered the what and the how. We need to talk about the why. Why go through all this trouble? Why not just write book 7?
This is the big question. Is this just productive procrastination?
I mean, I've definitely reorganized my bookshelf to avoid writing an email. Is he just organizing his lore to avoid writing the next chapter?
JDA argues it is purely about efficiency. He keeps coming back to the Tolkien compare. Tolkien took decades. JDA wants to complete this organization phase in a few months. He wants the depth without the weight.
He views it as a force multiplier. This is a military, a tool that allows one person to do the work of 10.
Right. Like 11.
By handling the administrative sorting of the world via AI, he claims he is free to write new stories faster. He mentions specifically that this process has freed him up to write Steam Knight 2 and a full graphic novel script over a single weekend.
Wait, hold on. He wrote a graphic novel script in a weekend.
That is what the source claims.
That is fast. That is inhumanly fast.
It is incredibly fast. And the argument is that because he didn't have to stop and look up, wait, what does this city look like? Or who was the king then? Because he has the World Bible open on his second monitor, he can just flow. He can stay in the creative zone without being interrupted by the administrative zone.
That actually makes sense. Nothing kills flow state faster than having to hunt through a PDF for a name you can't quite remember.
It's the ultimate productivity hack for a series writer. And this brings us to the elephant in the room, the E word, ethic. We have to touch on this because AI in the art is, let's call it a spicy topic right now.
It is a minefield. People have very strong feelings about it.
Usually the argument against AI is that it's theft. It's scraping the work of artists without their consent and regurgitating it.
Yeah.
It's plagiarism on a massive scale.
Correct. But JDA frames his approach as an explicitly ethical use of AI. And his defense is based on the source data, which is himself. His argument is, I am training this model on my own intellectual property. I am expanding my own capabilities using my own data. He isn't asking the AI to write in the style of George R.R. Martin. He isn't asking it to steal plots from Brandon Sanderson. He is asking it to organize the work of John Del Arroz.
He's not scraping the internet. He's scraping his own hard drive.
Exactly. He views it as a tool for the solo creator to compete with the output of a massive franchise.
That's an interesting angle. Usually we think of solo creator versus the corporation. And usually the corporation wins because they have interns, they have editors, they have continuity check.
Star Wars has an entire department at Lucasfilm just for keeping the canon straight, the story group.
Right. The holocron, a guy whose literal job is to know if a Wookiee was on that planet in that year. JDA can't afford a holocron keeper.
No. So he built one. He is using AI to build his own digital staff. It levels the playing field.
And he is integrating this directly into his business model, right?
Yeah.
This isn't just a back-end tool. He's bringing the audience into it.
Oh, yes. He mentions Subscribe Star, which is a Patreon alternative. He is inviting readers to fund the world-building process.
This is a significant shift in how we think about selling writing. Usually you pay for the finished book.
He is asking them to pay to watch him build the map, to see the timeline come together, to read the World Bible entries as they are generated.
He's monetizing the wiki.
In a way, yes, and there is a market for that. The dream, as he states, is to be a full-time artist supported by a community that enjoys the deep dive into lore, the maps, the histories, just as much as the narrative story. It turns the world itself into the product, not just the novels set within it.
That's a very Tolkien idea. I mean, think about it. How many people own the Atlas of Middle-earth, or books about the languages of El, or the Star Wars Visual Dictionary?
Millions.
Sometimes people love the world more than the plot. They want to know the history of the Ath Peninsula, just as much as they want to know if Zara saves the day.
It creates a sense of immersion. If the world feels deep, fans want to live in it. They want to explore the corners.
So let's bring this all together. We have an author who realized he built a complex world almost by accident. He's using AI to excavate that world, polish it, and present it as a cohesive mythology.
It is a transition from pantser to architect via reverse engineering. It is an innovation that effectively lowers the barrier to entry for epic.
It changes the landscape. It makes deep world building accessible to someone who maybe doesn't have 50 years to spare. You no longer need a memory palace to keep track of 6 books worth of details. You just need a good database.
But, and this is the final thought I want to leave with, and it's a bit of a philosophical curveball, it does raise a question about authorship.
Go for it. Let's get philosophical.
We established that the AI found the Age of Giants. JDA wrote the words giants and ancient in separate books, but the AI connected them and said, here is the historical era.
Yeah.
So who is the true architect of that history? Is it the writer who wrote the throwaway line? Or is it the algorithm that recognized the pattern and gave it?
Yeah, trippy thought. Does the world exist if the AI doesn't organize it? I mean, the pieces were there, but they were just noise. The AI found the signal in the noise.
Did JDA invent the Second Age, or did he discover it in his own subconscious? And does it even matter to the reader if the resulting world feels...
Man, that is something to chew on. The line between trader and curator is getting really blurry. It's like the AI is the editor, but an editor that can see connections the author's brain.
It certainly is. And as these tools get better, we are going to see more of this. Augmented imagination.
Well, on that note, we're going to wrap up this deep dive into Roselandia and the future of AI world build. It's a brave new world out there for fantasy authors. Whether you love it or hate it, it's happening.
Indeed. It is a tool, and like any tool, it depends on how you hold it.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep building your worlds however you choose to do it.
Until next time.